Most people think dementia is something that just happens to you, like a light switch. One day you're fine, the next you're not. In 30 years of medicine, 30 years of watching the body break down from the inside, I can tell you that is not how it works. Dementia doesn't arrive without warning. It builds, slowly, quietly, over years and years before a single symptom ever appears. And here's what terrifies me. As a doctor, and as someone who has sat across from hundreds of families getting the worst news of their lives, most of the damage is happening right now. In people who feel perfectly fine, in people who exercise, eat reasonably well, and had their last checkup 6 months ago and were told everything was normal. I've spent the last several years studying what neuroscientists are now calling the most critical window in dementia prevention, and the findings are unlike anything I learned in medical school. There are 5 daily habits, 5 things you do or don't do every single day that either protect your brain or silently accelerate its decline. One of them is something almost everyone over 60 does every night without a second thought. Another one is something most people genuinely believe is good for them. And I'm going to walk you through all 5 today, what they are, why they matter, and exactly what to do. Because what I've seen in patients who implement these changes is nothing short of remarkable. Stay with me, because the next 20 minutes could change the rest of your life. I want to tell you about a man named Gerald. Gerald was 71 years old when his daughter brought him to see me. Not for a cardiac issue. He'd heard me speak at a community health event, and his daughter, who was in the audience, had written down my name. She said to me, "Doctor, something is wrong with my father, and no one can tell us what it is." Gerald didn't look sick. He was tall, still had good posture, retired school teacher, the kind of man who still wore a collared shirt on a Tuesday. Sharp eyes, warm handshake. But as I sat with him, I started to notice things. He repeated the same story about his granddaughter twice, within 5 minutes, with the same details, the same smile, as if the first time had never happened. When I asked him what he'd had for breakfast, he laughed and said, "You know, I honestly couldn't tell you." His daughter told me he'd been getting lost on his regular morning walk, a route he'd walked every day for 11 years. He thought he was just getting older. His wife thought it was stress. His doctor had run basic blood work and said everything was fine. But Gerald wasn't fine. What was happening inside Gerald's brain had been building for nearly a decade. And when I asked him about his daily habits, how he slept, what he ate, how active he was, what his evenings looked like, I saw it clearly. 5 habits, 5 patterns that had been quietly, consistently working against his brain every single day for years. Gerald looked at me when I laid it out for him and said, "Why didn't anyone ever tell me this?" That's why I'm making this video, because you deserve to know this before it's too late to do something about it. Stay with me, because what I'm about to explain, the actual mechanism of what was happening inside Gerald's brain, this is the part that changes everything. Let's start with what's actually happening inside an aging brain, because without understanding the mechanism, the habits won't make sense. Your brain is approximately 3 pounds of tissue. It contains roughly 86 billion neurons, nerve cells that communicate through a network of electrical and chemical signals so complex, no computer on Earth comes close to replicating it. Think of your brain like a city, a massive, intricate city, with highways, water pipes, electrical lines, and waste management systems running simultaneously. Now, what happens to any city when the roads stop getting maintained, when the pipes start leaking, when the garbage doesn't get picked up? It doesn't collapse overnight. It deteriorates, block by block, year by year. That is what dementia looks like from the inside. Not a sudden catastrophe, a slow, accumulating breakdown of the city's infrastructure. And the 5 habits I'm about to describe? They are either the maintenance crew keeping that city alive, or they are the neglect that lets it crumble. Habit number 1, chronic sleep deprivation. Here is something most people don't know. Your brain has its own sewage system. It's called the glymphatic system, and it only operates at full capacity while you sleep. Every night, during deep sleep, your brain cells actually shrink by up to 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow through and flush out waste products, including a protein called beta amyloid. Beta amyloid is the primary building block of the plaques found in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. Your brain produces it every day. During deep sleep, your glymphatic system washes it away. When you don't get enough sleep, or when your sleep quality is poor, that waste doesn't get cleared. It accumulates. Over years, it builds into plaques that block communication between neurons. In Gerald's case, he'd been sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night for over a decade. He thought it was fine. "I've always been a light sleeper," he told me. But his brain had been filling with uncollected garbage for 10 years. A landmark study from the University of Rochester found that just one night of poor sleep caused a measurable spike in beta amyloid accumulation in the brain. Imagine what a decade of poor sleep does. Here's what almost nobody tells you about sleep and dementia. It's not just about how many hours you get. It's about how many hours of deep, restorative sleep you're getting, and those are very different things. Habit number 2, physical inactivity. The brain is a hungry organ. It uses approximately 20% of your body's total energy, even though it only accounts for about 2% of your body weight. To feed the brain, your heart must pump oxygen-rich blood through a network of blood vessels, some as wide as a thumb, some thinner than a human hair. When you're physically inactive, those vessels don't stay strong. Think of a garden hose that sits coiled in the garage for months. When you finally turn the water on, the pressure is inconsistent, the hose is stiff, and sections start to crack. The same thing happens to the blood vessels feeding your brain when circulation drops from chronic inactivity. Exercise, even moderate walking, increases the production of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Scientists sometimes call it miracle grow for the brain. BDNF stimulates the growth of new neurons, reinforces existing neural connections, and actively slows the atrophy of the hippocampus, the brain region most associated with memory. A Harvard Medical School study found that regular aerobic exercise can actually increase hippocampal volume by up to 2% in older adults, effectively reversing age-related shrinkage by 1 to 2 years. Gerald hadn't done any consistent physical activity in 3 years. A knee injury had slowed him down, and he'd never recovered his routine. His garden hose had been sitting in the garage. Habit number 3, social isolation. This one surprises people. It surprised me too when I first encountered the research. The brain is a social organ. When you engage in meaningful conversation, navigate complex social dynamics, recall shared memories with loved ones, your brain is performing some of its most demanding cognitive work. Social interaction stimulates the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and multiple language and memory centers simultaneously. It's like a full-body workout for your neural network. When that stimulation disappears, the network starts to go quiet. A study published in the Journals of Gerontology found that older adults who experienced significant social isolation had a 50% higher risk of developing dementia than those who maintained active social lives. 50%. That number stopped me in my tracks when I first read it. Gerald had retired 4 years earlier and had gradually withdrawn from most of his social circles. His wife had passed away 2 years prior. He saw his daughter on weekends, occasionally spoke to a neighbor. His brain's social circuits were running on near empty. And here's what almost no one talks about: the cognitive reserve hypothesis. The more your brain is actively stimulated throughout your life, the more reserve it builds. Social engagement is one of the most powerful builders of cognitive reserve we know of. It's the brain's backup generator. Habit number 4, ultra-processed food and blood sugar spikes. There is a reason some researchers now refer to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. Here's the mechanism. Insulin is a hormone that helps your cells, including brain cells, absorb glucose for energy. When you chronically consume ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, and high glycemic carbohydrates, your body floods with insulin repeatedly. Over time, your cells become resistant to it, including your brain cells. When the brain can't absorb glucose efficiently, its neurons are literally being starved, even when blood sugar is high. Think of a city with plenty of water in the reservoir, but the pipes are clogged, so none of it reaches the homes. A 2020 study in the journal Diabetologia found that people with insulin resistance had significantly accelerated brain atrophy and poorer cognitive performance on standardized tests, years before any clinical diagnosis. Gerald's diet wasn't terrible by most people's standards, but it was high in processed grains, sweetened drinks, and regular portions of refined carbohydrates. His fasting glucose was at the high end of normal. His brain's pipes were getting clogged. Habit number 5, chronic unmanaged stress. Stress is not a feeling. It's a physiological state. When your brain perceives a threat, real or perceived, it triggers the release of cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Cortisol is useful in short bursts. It sharpens focus, mobilizes energy, prepares you to respond. But cortisol is also neurotoxic in chronic doses. Prolonged elevated cortisol has been shown to damage and shrink the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, directly. It also promotes neuroinflammation, the chronic, low-grade inflammation of brain tissue that researchers now believe is one of the key drivers of Alzheimer's pathology. If beta-amyloid plaques are the traffic jams of dementia, neuroinflammation is the broken traffic system that made those jams inevitable. Gerald had been living under significant, unaddressed psychological stress for years. The loss of his wife, financial concerns after retirement, the gradual loss of purpose and routine. He described it as a low hum that never stops. That low hum was slowly burning out his hippocampus. I've seen this pattern, these 5 habits working together, in more patients than I can count. And here's what I've also seen. People who address them systematically can dramatically slow this process, sometimes reverse it. That's what happened next for Gerald. Gerald and I spent 90 minutes together that first day. I referred him to a neurologist for formal assessment, and I want to be honest with you. Gerald had early-stage mild cognitive impairment, real, documented changes in his brain. But here is what I also told him. This is not a sentence, Gerald. This is a starting point. Over the following 6 months, Gerald made 5 specific changes. Not all at once. We started slow, built gradually. His daughter joined him every step of the way. First, we addressed his sleep. A sleep specialist identified he had undiagnosed mild sleep apnea, a condition that had been fragmenting his deep sleep cycles for years. With a CPAP device and improved sleep hygiene practices, he was averaging 7 hours of consolidated sleep within 8 weeks. Second, he started walking. 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week. By month 3, he was walking 45 minutes daily. His daughter walked with him on weekends. Third, he rejoined his church community and started attending a weekly book group he dropped out of after his wife passed. By month 4, he had regular lunches with 2 old colleagues. Fourth, we worked with a registered dietitian to significantly reduce his intake of ultra-processed foods and refined sugars. He adopted a Mediterranean-style eating pattern, not a diet, a way of eating. Fifth, and this one surprised Gerald the most, we introduced a structured mindfulness practice, 10 minutes a day. Not meditation in the way he imagined it, just 10 minutes of deliberate, slow breathing and body awareness. Research on cortisol reduction in older adults following this practice is compelling. At his 6-month follow-up with the neurologist, Gerald's cognitive test scores had improved. Not dramatically, not miraculously, but measurably, undeniably, better. His daughter sent me a text that said, "He remembered my daughter's recital this week. He talked about it for 3 days. Doctor, we have our dad back." It was not too late for Gerald, and it is not too late for you. Here is exactly what to do. 5 habits, concrete, practical, actionable today. Number 1, protect and optimize your sleep. What to do? Your minimum target is 7 to 8 hours of actual sleep, not just time in bed. More importantly, you want to protect your deep sleep cycles. Why this matters? Your glymphatic system clears beta-amyloid and other neurotoxic waste exclusively during deep sleep. Every hour of fragmented or insufficient sleep is an hour your brain's cleaning crew didn't show up. When to start? Tonight. Begin with these 3 steps. Set a consistent bedtime and wake time, even on weekends. Eliminate screens, phones, tablets, television, at least 60 minutes before bed. The blue light they emit suppresses melatonin and delays deep sleep onset. And keep your bedroom cool. Between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit is optimal for sleep quality. What not to do. Do not use alcohol to help you fall asleep. Alcohol may help you fall asleep faster, but it dramatically suppresses REM and deep sleep, leaving you more cognitively impaired the next day, not less. If you snore heavily, wake up unrefreshed despite enough hours, or have been told you stop breathing during sleep, talk to your doctor about a sleep study. Undiagnosed sleep apnea is one of the most under-recognized contributors to cognitive decline in adults over 60. Number 2. Move your body every single day. What to do? A minimum of 30 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity, brisk walking, swimming, cycling, at least 5 days per week. If you're currently sedentary, start with 15 minutes and build gradually. Why this matters? Exercise increases BDNF, the growth protein that builds new neurons and protects the hippocampus. It also improves cerebrovascular circulation, reduces insulin resistance, and lowers chronic cortisol. It is the single most evidence-backed intervention for brain health in the literature. When to start? This week. Not next Monday. This week. Even a 10-minute walk today is a signal to your brain that the maintenance crew is back on the job. What not to do? Don't skip exercise because you have joint pain and assume it's unavoidable. Low-impact alternatives, water aerobics, recumbent cycling, gentle yoga, provide nearly identical neurological benefits without joint strain. Talk to your doctor or a physical therapist about what's appropriate for you. Number 3. Invest in social connection, deliberately. What to do? Schedule at least 2 to 3 meaningful social interactions per week. Phone calls don't count. Voice-to-voice or face-to-face is what activates the neural circuits that matter. Why this matters? Social engagement stimulates multiple brain regions simultaneously and is one of the most powerful builders of cognitive reserve. It literally creates more neural pathways, more alternate routes your brain can use if primary ones become damaged. When to start? This week. Reach out to someone you've been meaning to call. Rejoin a group you stepped away from. Volunteer once a week. Start small, but start. What not to do? Don't count passive screen time as social engagement. Watching television, even with someone in the room, does not activate the same cognitive circuitry as real conversation. Number 4. Change what you eat, starting with what you eliminate. What to do? Adopt a Mediterranean-style eating pattern. Focus on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, fish, and healthy fats, particularly olive oil. Dramatically reduce ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, and sweetened beverages. Why this matters? The Mediterranean diet has more clinical evidence behind it for dementia prevention than any supplement, drug, or intervention currently available. A 2015 study in Alzheimer's and dementia found that adherence showed significantly slower cognitive decline, equivalent to being approximately 7.5 years younger cognitively than non-adherence. When to start? At your very next meal. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. Start with one substitution. Replace your regular cooking oil with extra virgin olive oil. Replace one processed snack with a handful of walnuts or blueberries. Build from there. What not to do? Don't fall for supplements marketed as brain boosters. The research on most commercially available brain supplements is weak to non-existent. Whole foods consistently outperform pills in every well-designed clinical trial I've reviewed. And there's one more habit. Most people skip this last one. And in my clinical experience, it may be the most underestimated of all. Number 5. Actively manage your stress response. What to do? Implement a daily stress reduction practice. 10 to 15 minutes every day. Options include diaphragmatic breathing, mindfulness meditation, gentle yoga, tai chi, or even deliberate slow walking in nature. Why this matters? Chronic cortisol is directly neurotoxic. It physically damages the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, with sustained exposure. Reducing your chronic stress load is not self-care, it is brain preservation. A randomized controlled trial from UCLA found that a consistent mindfulness practice reduced cortisol levels, decreased markers of neuroinflammation, and improved memory performance in adults over 60 within just 8 weeks. When to start? Today. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Sit in a chair with your feet on the floor. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 6 counts. Repeat. That is it. Do it every day. What not to do? Don't dismiss this as soft medicine. The biology of cortisol and hippocampal damage is some of the hardest science in neurology today. Stress management is not optional. It is foundational. Talk to your doctor before making significant changes to your diet, exercise routine, or any medications. I want to come back to Gerald for a moment. A few weeks after his 6-month follow-up, he sent me a letter, handwritten on lined paper, the kind of letter people don't write anymore. He said, "Doctor, I spent 3 years thinking the fog was just part of getting old. No one told me I had a say in it. Thank you for telling me I had a say." That letter is on my desk, because that is what this is really about. It's not about living forever. It's not about perfect health at 90. It's about having a say, about not handing over the most important years of your life, the years your grandchildren will remember, the years your family still needs you present, without at least putting up a fight. The 5 habits I shared with you today are not magic. They are not a cure, but they are the most powerful tools neuroscience has given us, and most people have never been told about them in a way that made the stakes clear. Now you know. So here's what I'm asking of you. Think of one person in your life, a spouse, a sibling, a friend, a grown child, who needs to hear this today. Not tomorrow, today. Share this video with them, not because it's interesting, but because it might matter more than either of you know. You didn't stumble on this video by accident. You're here because some part of you already knows that the brain you have right now, the sharpness, the memory, the presence, is worth protecting. It's worth the 10 minutes of breath work, the 30-minute walk, the phone call to an old friend. It's worth everything. And in my next video, I'm going to show you something that most cardiologists and neurologists are only beginning to talk about publicly. A connection between your heart and your brain that explains why protecting one is inseparable from protecting the other. And one specific number in your routine blood work that almost no one checks. But that may be the single most predictive marker of cognitive decline we have. That one's going to surprise you. I'll see you then.